Welcome, everybody. I hope y'all are having an okay day. It's good to see everybody even through the computer. Um, just a couple of quick notes. For those of you who are new to Zoom, um, at the bottom of your screen, if you scroll, you'll have several options pop up. There's a chat option. Um, you can stop your video, you can mute your audio, and I can control those things too. So, if we get some noise and feedback, I might put you on mute, and then you can unmute yourself when it comes time for participating. Another little note is we're going to have time for questions and answers at the end. So, what I'd like you to do is use the chat feature to go ahead and type in your questions as you think of them during the session. And then when we get to the end, if we have time, I'm going to call on you to ask your question. I'll remind you what it is. And if we don't, I'll just run through those questions for our team of experts myself. So we've got a smaller group here, and that was on purpose. So hopefully we have time to get to everyone's questions and get those answered. If we run up short in the chat box, we'll answer them after the webinar ends. The other thing to be aware of is we are recording this, and we will post it on YouTube. So if you need to share some of this information with your friends and fellow business owners, you're going to be able to do that after maybe an hour after the session's over, and you'll also be able to go back and review anything that you missed. I've got a couple of ringers in the bunch. We've got some downtown experts who've been participating in our webinars previously, so I think they're going to end up being co-hosts along with me and can help add some insight into the processes and tools that we're going to discuss, because they are well trained, and most of them have already started participating in the benefits that we're going to discuss today. I want to say a quick thanks to the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation and the Community Foundation of Central Georgia and the COVID-19 Fund at United Way. They have been incredibly helpful in helping us fund this program. We've been offering a lot of this advice for free to the downtown businesses. And now we're able to bring it to all of Central Georgia thanks to support from those groups. So Newtown Macon is a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1996 to revitalize downtown Macon, and our mission is to attract, leverage, and invest in self-sustaining transformation. So every day we're working with real estate developers and entrepreneurs to start businesses and fix buildings downtown. So we have 20 years of experience in providing advice, coaching, and a lot of that has become very, very useful in just the past couple of weeks as we try and survive this crisis. So in this seminar in particular, we're going to provide an overview of the strategies, tactics, and programs that are available to help support you through this crisis. We're going to start with my colleague, James Fritz, who is CFO at Newtown and also a certified public accountant. He is going to talk a little bit about how to decide what to do next. So taking the inventory of where you are, looking at the options that are available, and figuring out how to move forward. We're going to switch over then to Bethany Rogers, who is our Director of Business and Real Estate Development. She is our frontline staff person who's dealing with entrepreneurs and real estate developers day in and day out and manages all of our financing programs. So she is especially equipped to handle a discussion about the federal loan programs that are available, which will include the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the 7A loans, the Paycheck Protection Program, and some special SBA deferral programs. Then I'm going to pick up again and talk a little bit about a couple of the tax programs that the CARES Act enabled, and that's new information that we haven't talked about on any of Newtown's webinars before. And then I'm going to toss it back to James for a discussion about unemployment and furlough and some of the retirement programs that are available. And then Bethany is going to end up with an introduction to cash flow and budgeting. So now several of the things I mentioned are going to segue into specialized classes and individual topics. So the purpose today is for us to be able to point you in the right direction. So hopefully at the end of this webinar, you're going to know which tool or program is most likely to benefit your nonprofit or business most fastest. And then you're going to be able to register for that individual class after this to take a deep dive into that topic area. I think everyone needs to plan to take a deep dive into cash flow and budgeting, because as soon as we stabilize survival, we've got to turn our attention to reopening. Every single business and nonprofit on this call provides an invaluable service to our community, even if it's just putting your employees back to work. And so we have to make sure that we take this responsibility seriously and that we set ourselves up to make sure that we re-employ everybody we employed before this crisis and that we get back to normal as quickly as possible. We'll end up today with question and answers. So I'd like to move now into quick introductions of the group. I'm going to move down the participant list in the order that it's listed here. So Emily, do you mind doing a quick introduction first? What I'd really like to know for the business participants is you'll just tell us your name and the business or nonprofit that you're representing.
Yeah, so I'm Emily Hopkins. I serve as the Director of Place at Newtown-Macon and work with all the folks that you see on this webinar today.
Next on the list is Ms. Webb, Dolores Webb.
Yes, I am with Northbridge Baptist Church, and I work as I am on the Board of Trustees.
Great, thanks for joining us. Mr. Habersham.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Alex Habersham.
Mr. Spears, Alfie Spears.
If I can get off mute. You got me off mute?
Got it, yeah, you got it.
Okay. Hey, good afternoon, and thanks for doing this. We appreciate it very much, Josh. My name is Alfie Spears, and I'm a property owner in downtown Macon, and I have several tenants who are small business owners, and so I'm interested in what we can do to help them.
Great, thank you. Anita Shipman.
Hi, Josh. This is Adita. I'm representing Cherry Blossom as their accountant.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Elise Wisby. Ms. Wisby, Elise. Let's see. Let's keep going down the list. Felicia Howard. Are you there, Felicia? Felicia, can you do a quick introduction? All right, we'll keep going down the list. Miss Miller, Fanika, help me with the pronunciation too, please.
Yeah, right, Fanika. Hi, everybody.
Fanika, hey, great.
I am a SCORE volunteer mentor and a small business owner as well.
Great. What's your business?
A small consulting business, and we also do nonprofit management. So we're looking at PPP as well.
Great, fantastic. Jerry McCord. Okay, Jerry just posted in chat she's with the Ruth Hartley Mosley Women's Center. She doesn't have her microphone connected, but she's listening in right now. Let's see, Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer Bronner, would you mind doing a quick introduction?
Hey, this is Jennifer. I work in the accounting department at the Macon Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Next is Jennifer Price. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
I'm fine. Josh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Good morning, and thank you for doing this. I'm Jennifer with the Business and Nonprofit Center at Washington Memorial Library. So I wanted to jump in today to be sure that I'm informed, because I know we'll be getting lots of questions. So I appreciate this opportunity.
Great. Megan Carson.
Hi, thank y'all for doing this today. I'm Megan. I own Sparks Yoga, which is a yoga studio downtown.
Great. Good to see you, Megan. Melissa Macker.
Hey, I'm Melissa. I'm the executive director of the 567 Center.
Great. Great to have you, Melissa. Paul Bronson.
Hey, how you doing, guys? Hey, Josh.
Hey, good to see you.
Community leader for the East Macon area and advocate for the downtown. So just here to see what we can do to support and listen in and do what we can to help.
Great. Scott Mitchell.
Hey everybody, Scott Mitchell. I own Travis Jean Emporium on Cherry Street.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Good to see you. Teddy Madison.
My name is Teddy Madison. I am the owner, along with Jay Madison, of Exodus Photography and Lofty in downtown Macon.
Great. Great to have you, Teddy. Thank you. Myra Umafoma. Let's see, Myra, do you have a ability to talk to us?
Josh, can you hear me?
Yeah, great.
Oh, awesome. It took me a while. Hey, y'all, my name is Felicia. I'm the owner of Felicia's Cake Factory. I have a storefront downtown on 3rd Street.
Great. Good to see you, Felicia. And let's see. Did I miss anybody? Jay Madison. Jay?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Madison. I'm the owner of Exodus Photography and Lofty. I'm Event Loft along with my husband who just spoke, Teddy Madison. We're located on Hawthorne Street downtown.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Great. So, and I've given you a quick introduction to my two colleagues who will be helping present today, Bethany Rogers and James Fritz. So I'm going to turn it over to James now to take over on how to decide what to do next.
Thank you, Josh. Let me get set up here. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. What we thought we'd start with is a little introduction. Basically, we've entitled, "What do we do now?" Just trying to get us all to the same place. So the coronavirus, right, has impaired everybody. We're not really able to serve or operate like we used to. The governor has thrown a couple dates out at us. One is the April 30th, where the shelter in place order expires. And the other one is May 13th, where the state of emergency expires. Reading what I've been able to read, if they expect the drop off, they expect the high point to be here in the next couple, 3 days, and then they expect a precipitous drop off in cases and deaths. And if that happens, I believe their intent is not to renew these orders, which I think would tell us that maybe sometime the middle of May, we can start to operate, at least in some sort of ramp up phase. It'll be interesting to see how they allow us to come back. But from this discussion, we were trying to set an expectation that hopefully they don't have to extend, but maybe another 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and then we can get back to business. So, kind of, mark those dates, not in stone, but just something to give us all something to shoot for, because, there's a lot of decisions we have to make. Do we continue to operate? Do we continue to operate in some reduced capacity, or do we just shut down? And a lot of y'all have already made those decisions. But in any event, the question that everybody has is, okay, so we've heard about this $2 trillion CARES Act. Does it help me? Does it help my business? And what about my employees? And so we're going to try to answer those at least at some high level today. The thing that y'all have to remember is that everybody's business is very unique. And so we can't really give you the silver bullet or the carte blanche that's gonna do it. What we really need everybody to start doing is to try to forecast what their revenues and expenses are through May, because that will probably give you your answer. So some businesses have not been paired at all, right? Some businesses like retail, grocery stores are going gangbusters. Other businesses are still operating, but in a different capacity, such as restaurants are doing takeout only. And then there's other ones like a bar or something that's just totally out of business. So when we go in and try to help you guys, we will get to some point to where we're having to work with you individually because everybody's got unique set. All right, so the CARES Act is a really interesting piece of legislation in that it tried to come out and support both big businesses, small businesses, and employees. The other thing that it really did, which was just unprecedented in Georgia, in the United States, is it's included self-employed and contractors and gig workers, musicians, for example, in what they call the definition of employees. And that's really important because heretofore, those classes of people have been excluded from a lot of the benefit programs. And so when they did that, people don't realize it because it seems obvious at first blush, but what really has happened is it's kind of set all these administrative agencies on their ear, because now they've got to go in and modify all their systems to be able to handle a whole different group of workers than they've had it before. And so it's really requiring a lot of coordination between federal agencies, state agencies to just work really in tandem, which, as y'all know, they have never done before. So the message there is we kind of all need to be just a little bit patient, because they are really working hard and getting this stuff to us. So for the employee, we're going to talk about 4 or 5 programs. There's the recovery rebate, there's partial unemployment, there's pandemic unemployment, there's Family First, and then there's the coronavirus related distribution. So we'll get to all those in a little bit of detail in a minute. And then on the business side, we've got the EIDL and the EIDL grant, the 2 loan things, and then we've got the payment protection, and then there's also employer retention tax credit and some other changes in the tax code. So we'll get into a little bit of detail on those. So with that kind of concludes mine. So Bethany's going to talk next about the loan programs.
Okay, so I'm unmuted, correct? Give me a thumbs up. To the rest of the crowd here, I've had technical difficulties. I'm an ex-gen, so I need my whole team to yell at me loudly if I'm doing this properly, so bear with me. But we did practice this once today for you guys, so hopefully we'll be good here. Okay, so I'm going to talk with you today. So as James mentioned, the CARES Act, was purposefully geared to support business owners, employers, and then employees. So these first 2 programs, these loan programs through the Small Business Administration program, are definitely programs designed to assist the business owner, to help them meet expenses that they can't because of cash flow disruptions because of the pandemic, as well as to continue to keep people on their payroll or to continue to pay yourselves. So the first loan is the economic injury disaster loans. These loans have been around forever, for droughts or hurricanes or what have you, but they're typically regionally. This is probably the first time the entire nation at one time has been eligible to apply for these loans, but it is unique in that you apply directly to the SBA. Most of the SBA programs you apply through other people, but not this one, directly to the SBA through an online portal that they have created. All SMIs, the entire country is now been declared like a state of emergency. So any small business owner in the United States is eligible to apply. And we encourage absolutely everybody to do so. There's really nothing to lose, and you'll see that more as I talk you through this program. The idea is for monies from this program to help you finance business expenses that you're having a hard time paying now because of disruptions to cash flow. It is not to help you expand, and it is not to help you get paid for business that you are about to get, but just to help you meet those typical expenses that you can't right now because of cash flow disruptions. So we know that awards can be up to $2 million for businesses. We know that for nonprofits, and probably, well, we know that nonprofits is a 2.75% interest rate. Small businesses, 3.75%. I don't know about faith-based groups. I have a feeling they're under that 2.75%, but I know you are eligible to apply. The terms can be up to 30 years, which makes your payments very low. They are going to have a formula on how they are going to decide your loan award amount and term. So you do not get to say, I need $100,000. The SBA is going to come back to you and say, we've got a loan for you of say $50,000. So this program existed prior to the passage of the CARES Act, which literally passed 2 weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago, right? Exactly 2 weeks ago. So in the CARES Act, though, they gave the SBA the latitude to use very, very basic rudimentary information to be able to underwrite these loans, because underwriting loans can take weeks and weeks of time. And so they're like, you can use like 4 or 5 sets of information to determine the amount that these businesses need so you can make these loans quickly. Unfortunately, the underwriting process is shrouded in a little bit of mystery and a lack of communication. They're also so overwhelmed. What we understand is that they're going to use credit scores, and personal credit scores specifically, maybe business credit scores, and the very basic information that you provide on the application to determine your loan award amount and eligibility. They could come back, a loan officer could be in touch with you to request additional information. What they're promising right now is about a 3-week turnaround, which is much slower than what they said initially, even for the grant program, which I'm about to talk to you about. So for instance, Newtown applied on the very first day that the Streamline application appeared, which was 2 Mondays ago. So 3 weeks out for us will be a week from this coming Monday. So that's about the turnaround, and they're saying that if they need additional information, they'll get in touch with you prior to making the loan award that 3 weeks out from your submission date. Okay, so here's some things to know about the program. And because the SBA is so overwhelmed, it's just good for you to be informed of these features so you know for yourself, or that you can ask your SBA loan officer more questions. First of all, there is a grant now, and this came out of the CARES Act. It can be up to $10,000. We're now getting news reports that it will be $1,000 per employee. That has not been confirmed, but it is not guaranteed that it is $10,000. It is up to $10,000. And once you get awarded this grant that you apply for through the same application as the loan program, you do not have to pay those monies back. So when it does show up and it gets deposited in your account, that grant or advance piece is just going to be cash money that you can use to help support your business or nonprofit. And some folks have asked, can you accept the grant and the loan? Absolutely. That's the idea. Their hope is that they get the advance out to you a little more quickly so that you have that to help you bide your time until the loan award comes through for you. But if you only want to accept the grant, that's fine as well. There are no closing fees and there are no prepayment penalties. So if you aren't sure if you're going to need this money, we encourage you to go ahead and apply, because if it turns out you're in good shape come September, just pay it all off. There are no penalties to do that. One thing to know, so probably initially they're going to offer you a smaller loan. And then give you the option to get a bigger loan, which is called a secured loan or collateralized loan. And in the world of loans and underwriting, what that means is typically a lender wants you to just be able to pay your loan with the cash flow that you have from your business. But they always want some kind of other option just in case something happens, like your business shuts down and you can't pay that loan from your profits. So they want some kind of asset of similar value to that loan amount, and that's what they call collateral or a security position in the loan. So you have the option to either say, I would like to pledge some collateral and get a larger loan, or even if you have assets or you own real estate, you can say, I don't want to pledge any collateral and I'll take a smaller loan amount. So that's a conversation you can have with your SBA loan officer. You also go ahead, apply, and you can have 6 months before you draw that loan down, and you can just see if you actually need it. So it's another great reason we think you should go ahead and apply. Maybe you're not going to need it, you're not sure, go ahead and get the loan award and give yourself 6 months, see how your cash flow holds up, and use the funds if you need them. They're now saying that monthly payments can be deferred for up to a year, so you can take the loan monies and have a year before you start making your payments. And they are excellent interest rates and terms. On this next slide here, just as an example, these emergency loans compared to other typical products out there. So if you were to look up 6 months from now and be like, man, I need $50,000 to keep my nonprofit or my business going, you can see the monthly payment amounts here. By far, taking this emergency injury disaster loan is the much better way to go as far as cash flow for you and your business. The application process, again, it's all online. It's a 3-page application. This is also how you apply for the grant, and you want to double, triple check at the very end of the application on page 3 that you click the box, yes, please consider me for the advance. This grant application and loan application has gotten so straightforward that we can just walk you through it. We've already done this with some of our small business owners. So we are going to do these 1-hour classes and literally walk you through the process. So we encourage you, if this is something you haven't done, to join us for that in our smaller group webinars, and we'll walk you straight through the economic injury disaster loan and grant application process. Okay. So the other program that came out of the CARES Act is the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, and everybody has been referring to it as PPP. So this one is different. It is not administered by the SBA directly. It is administered by SBA 7A approved lenders, typically banks, but there are some online lenders. This has made this program more complicated for people to access. So you've got to identify if the bank you typically work with is a 7A lender. And we do have a resource guide to Macon banks that shows who is and who is currently taking applications. This loan program has been so popular, some banks have stopped taking applications, but they're looking for another huge round of federal funding on this. So we're optimistic that it will keep going. But we have that resource guide separate that we'll share with you. Again, all small business owners, 500 employees or less, eligible to apply. In the case of this program is specifically designed to help keep you and your staff on payroll for what they're calling the cover period, for what they are hoping are the 10 weeks where all our small businesses in the country are going to be most severely impacted by the pandemic. So from February 15th to June 1st, they're calling it the covered period. And they want to provide you with enough monies to cover not only compensation, but anything related to benefits for you and your employees and a few other small operational costs. Okay, so again, just like with the EIDL loan, the EIDL loan, the SBA, you're not going to ask for your loan amount. They have a formula and they're going to determine how much your award is. And basically what they're going to do is ideally look at your average staffing expenses over the last calendar year, come up with an average staffing expense, and then multiply that by 250% or 2.5 months. If you're a brand new business, they're going to use the first 2 months of 2020. And if you weren't in business prior to February 15th, 2020, unfortunately, you're not eligible for this program. So the critical thing to understand here with this program, and the powerful piece of this, is if you keep all your employees on payroll and you can keep your expenses at close to what they were pre-disaster for these 10 weeks ahead, your costs, your staffing costs will be forgiven. Now, this loan, it's going to be so important. You're going to really need to be diligent, have conversations with your SBA loan officer, because once you get your loan award, you're going to have 8 weeks to use that money to essentially show you've got costs that match your pre-disaster expenses to cover payroll for 10 weeks. And if you can do that and you can show that you've documented all that spending on eligible expenses, then all those monies will be forgiven and you will not have to pay a penny of it back. What's really important to know here too is those of you that don't pay yourself as owners of the business through a salary W-2, but you do owner draws, those are treated as eligible expenses. That is compensation to yourself, and you can include that as monies that can be forgiven through the PPP program. If you have laid folks off but you rehire them prior to June 1st, then it means you can be partially eligible for forgiveness. Now, this is going to be a proportional thing, and you're going to, again, have to have regular conversations with your SBA loan officer. But if you think this is something you get into Q4 and it looks promising, you can hire folks back prior to June 1 and get some forgiveness on their payroll costs. If you keep everybody on board, you have to lower wages to get by. As long as you don't lower wages more than 25%, it will all be forgiven. Anything more significant than that, then there's going to be a proportional deduction in what they're going to forgive. So if it turns out there are some of your payroll expenses that the SBA does not forgive once you submit all your spending, then those monies will have to be repaid over a 2-year term at an interest rate starting at 1%. Starting at 1%. We don't know what that ultimately means, but that's what the SBA paperwork says.
Marissa, what you said, that's your crazy. What did you say? Like, all right, boom. So you know how, like, how did they put they?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what your question was. Ideally, let's wait for questions till the end. If you can make a note or go ahead and shoot it in chat, it's just going to keep the flow of this better. It's a lot of information and we want to be sure we get through it all. So just real quick, the other features, again, to be aware of, because your SBA loan officers are going to be so overwhelmed. The great news on this one is you don't have to personally guarantee the loan award. All they're trying to do is figure out how to help you with this immediate cash flow issue related to staffing for the 10-week covered period. On this program, you can defer payments for up to 6 months. So once you get that loan award, you've got 6 months before you start paying it back. No closing fees, no prepayment penalties. There are a few expenses that are eligible for forgiveness not related to payroll. Some rent, debt service on your real estate, some utilities. They cannot exceed more than 25% of the total loan. So just have a conversation with your SBA officer about how to include that, but they'll work that through with you before they make the final loan award. And then it is important to know that you can get a PPP and an EIDL loan award. You're just going to have to verify that you're using those loan monies for different expenses. Should not be hard to do. You know, you might focus on inventory purchases or things like that for the EIDL, so you can focus your PPP loan award on staffing. And so applying it varies a little bit more because there's not one application. So the different SBA lenders have slightly different processes. So you're going to have to find out from, you know, the lender that you work with directly what information you're going to need. It could be worthwhile to go ahead and review the SBA's generic PPP application form. It will give you an idea of the kind of historical financial data you'll need on your business for the application. And again, this one, it's complicated enough. Very, very much encourage you to join us if you have not applied for this program yet. Join us for our webinar specifically dedicated to this program, and we'll walk you through it in more detail. And one last thing, this isn't going to apply to too many of us, but I just want to be sure if any of you out there currently hold an SBA loan, a non-disaster loan, not an EIDL loan from another disaster, you are eligible for what they call the Small Business Debt Relief Program. For 6 months, your payments, I mean, principal, interest, and any fees are going to be paid for by the federal government. So you have 6 months. And it's not just that you're not paying, like they're paying it for you. So it's 6 months of your loan being paid for you by the federal government. If you have started the application on any SBA product that is not a disaster loan, that's not the PPP or not the EIDL, you might want to go ahead and think about trying to push it through and close by June 1st, because then your first 6 months are going to be, payments are going to be covered. So that's just a really important little thing if that applies to you to be aware of, because that's an excellent benefit available through the SBA right now. So those are my pieces related to business owners' benefits that are out there. And then Josh, if you want to talk to folks about the tax credit that's available to business owners.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bethany. That was great. So, I mean, just to sum that up, and in fact, we have a client who has an SBA loan in the pipeline right now, right? And it's $2 million and their payments $7,000 a month. So I mean, that 6 months is going to save them $40,000, right? That's real cash benefit for anybody who has or is working on an SBA loan. That could be really helpful. And then the PPP and EIDL that applies for churches, nonprofits. I mean, almost everyone in small business in the country is eligible for that. And so if you haven't gotten both those applications done, you need to. That was really, really helpful. So I'm going to pull up my slides right now on some of these tax credit programs. These are a little bit narrower in application, but if they apply to you, it's going to be a big deal. So the two tax programs I want to talk about are the net operating loss carryback and the employee retention credit. So I'm going to go through those one by one. And y'all hang on to your hats if you're not really into tax, because this is a little bit technical on the net operating loss. So the net operating loss carryback applies only to for-profit businesses because it adjusts the way you pay taxes. And if you aren't paying taxes, this does not apply. More specifically than that, if you're going to take advantage of this, you need to be a business that had losses or depreciation in a year that in one of the last 5 years and you weren't able to use all of them. And I'm going to walk you through what that might look like. And the way you take advantage of it is that you amend your tax returns to use those losses that would have been wasted otherwise. In general, businesses only have to pay taxes if they make money. So if the business is not profitable, if it only breaks even or it generates a loss, then it pays little to no tax. And there are some, like especially with real estate investors, they get to take some non-cash expenses like depreciation, where they actually may be putting money into their pocket and still not paying taxes. So it gets even better than that, though. The U.S. tax code not only allows you not to pay taxes if you lost money, they allow you to take that into other tax years where you did make money and not pay tax on that either, right? It's a little bit shocking for those of us who are not taking advantage of these programs on a regular basis. So the tax law has allowed for a long time losses from 1 year to apply to other years. Now, before the CARES Act, the 2017 Tax Act changed the way that these could be used. So before the CARES Act, net operating losses could only be carried back to 2 prior tax years. And they could only be used to reduce the taxable income in any year by 80%. That means that before the CARES Act, even if you had losses, you're going to pay taxes on at least 20% of your income. Even if you have a loss, and no matter what years you put that back into. So if you have a big loss in a single year or a lot of depreciation, it could go to waste. So here's an example of a sample business from 2014 to 2019. And you can see that they had an income of around $500,000, expenses of $350,000. And so they've had net income in almost every one of these years. They've been profitable, $150,000, $150,000, all the way up to $240,000 in 2018. And they've been paying taxes on that net income. So for the 150,000 years, that's 52,000 in taxes, 50,000 in the year where they made 240. But look at 2019. In 2019, this business had a huge loss, had about the same income, but had $1.5 million in expenses. Now, under the current tax law, you still have to pay taxes on 20% of your income, even if you have a loss. So they still get a tax bill of $27,000. Now, the good thing about the existing law is it does let you take that loss back 2 years. And so even though they still have to pay taxes on a portion of their income in 2019, they can go file an amendment for 18 and 17 and reduce their income in those years down to 20%. And so by carrying that loss back, they can get a refund in 2019 for $31,000. That's a big deal. I mean, that is a cash payment from the IRS that goes to you in 2019. So, but the CARES Act makes it a lot more beneficial. So the rules around carryback losses under the CARES Act revert to pre-2017 Tax Act rules. And so the losses can reduce taxes owed to zero. So there's no longer that limitation where you have to pay taxes on 20% of your income. That is gone. You can now pay no tax. And the losses can be carried back 5 years instead of just 2. So again, taking this same example where I told you we could carry back this $850,000 loss into 2 years, now you can carry it back into 5 years. And in those 2 years where you already carried it back, your tax can now go to 0 instead of paying on just on 20% of your income. So this is a massive difference. Under the law before the CARES Act, you were only going to carry back 150 grand of your loss, and you were only going to get a refund of $31,000. Now you can carry back $840,000 of that loss, and you get a refund of $200,000 more in this example. So you go back and amend those 2 prior years that you'd already carried back some of the losses, and then you'd go back and amend the 3 before that. So you get an additional refund of 200 grand in this example. Now, this is a very specific benefit because you have to have had profits in some of those past 5 years, and you have to have had losses in some of them that you weren't able to use. So there may not be a whole lot of people this applies to, but it's one of the few benefits for real estate investors that's available under the Act. And there may be some examples like for a real estate investor that you had excess depreciation, or you had depreciation that could have been accelerated, but you didn't because you couldn't use it. You can amend your tax returns now, accelerate that depreciation, and carry back those losses. So it just doesn't affect you in tax years going forward. You can actually go get a refund now that will put cash in your pocket. Another potential benefit that we thought about in this program are businesses that are having a terrible 2019, but were profitable beforehand. So a lot of our downtown restaurants and bars have made money, posted profits, and paid taxes, but they will not be doing so this year. And so the other change that this really enables is for those businesses to make sure they can take advantage of those losses. After the end of this year, they'll be able to amend 5 years before and get big refunds for any taxes they had paid in those prior 5 years. The downside of that is the cash ain't going to be available until you can file 2020 taxes. So you won't actually get the cash till 2021 for those specific businesses that have losses this year and only this year because of COVID-19. So the second program I want to talk about is the Employee Retention Credit. This applies to almost all small businesses, nonprofits or for-profits, but you have to have either had your revenues drop by 50% or you were ordered to partially or fully close because of government orders. If those both those conditions apply to you, you can get a $5,000 tax credit per employee. The maximum is half the employee's wages. So an employee making 40 grand on an annual basis gets the maximum credit. And the way you get this cash is that you retain the taxes you would have paid to the federal government. So this one's entirely within your control. This is something where you can take cash that would have had to have been sent to the federal government now and convert it into your operating account. This is one of the only programs I know of that could put cash in your hands right now because, as James mentioned earlier and Bethany talked about, every federal employee in the whole disaster system is working as hard as they can, but the timelines where these benefits are actually going to get paid off somewhere down the line. This is the only thing I know of you could do now. But here's the downside. You can only get either a Paycheck Protection Program loan or an employee retention credit. So if you go ahead and choose this employee retention credit, you are limited to the $5,000 per employee, and that's it. So just to remind you about the differences between those two programs, the ERC the employee retention credit is only half of wages up to $5,000 per employee. It's paid through a tax credit. So you retain the money you would have sent to the federal government for your federal payroll taxes. And if you don't have enough to retain it, they will refund it. And so you are in control of this whole system. You claim it on your quarterly 941. Now, contrast that with the Paycheck Protection Program. The Paycheck Protection Program gives 100% of wages for 2.5 months, which is probably a much bigger number than the $5,000 per employee. It's paid through a forgivable loan, so the net result is the same. It's a cash grant that you get to keep, but you have to obtain it from a private 7A lender. And God knows when you will get that. It just depends on who your banker is and what system they've established for paying out these benefits. So there are definitely pluses and minuses of each system, but unlike the SBA, you can and should now, today, go apply for an economic injury disaster loan from the SBA and apply for a Paycheck Protection Program loan. But if you get into a situation where you've got to have cash faster than the PPP, the ERC is an option. It just means you won't be able to close on that PPP loan. So I'm going to flip it back to James, who is going to pick up with some of the federal programs for unemployment and furloughed workers and some of the retirement system changes that have been made that may be beneficial.
Can y'all hear me? Yeah. All right, so this program, this section, we're going to talk about the basically 5 programs that are available for the employees. And so the first one is the traditional unemployment insurance that all the employers pay into. There is a piece of that that probably none of us ever knew about, which is where the employer can file claims on behalf of the employees. The typical process is an employee separates from a business and then they go to the Department of Labor and apply for unemployment assistance. Well, there is a thing called a partial claim where the employee goes in and says, hey, I let these people go, and if you check the COVID-19 box, they will expedite the process. It's taken about a week. They promised they would have these payments out in 48 hours, but we're experiencing about a week or so lag. And so, but it does save the employees from having to actually go stand in line at the unemployment office. The typical process is the employer goes in to the employer portal and then uploads an Excel spreadsheet. And so we're going to offer a 1-hour seminar on this one because filling out that Excel spreadsheet can be a little bit tricky. And at this point, for the Georgia Department of Labor program, it is only for W-2 employees. And so the next screen is when we have this a little seminar, if people can already go to the Department of Labor website and have a login, this is what the first screen looks like. And then the second screen, and then the third screen, which is where we go. We can really actually do this if people haven't done it. The other part is down here in this box, somewhere 4 or 5 down, there's a tutorial. So if somebody hasn't done this and they want to go ahead and jump ahead, they can take that tutorial because it explains. There's a couple nuances in that Excel spreadsheet that we just want to make sure. But the point is, it's an expedited way to get unemployment claim filed for your employees. The downside is you've got to file every week. So you've got to re-upload this file every week to keep the payments going. And then this is a screen that you uploaded. So that's the traditional Department of Labor stuff. The pandemic unemployment assistance that came through the CARES Act basically is going to do 2 things. It's going to add self-employed contractors and gig workers into this. Before, you had to be a W-2 employee to have unemployment benefits. So that's a huge expansion of the program. The other thing is it's going to add $600 a week. The max in Georgia at this point is $365, so $600 On top of that is a really big helpful benefit. It expires on July 31st, but they will retroactively take it back to whenever the bill is signed on the 27th. So it seems like it's going to be a really, really beneficial program. The struggle is the self-employed and the contractors and the gig workers will not be able to go into the website. Well, they will have to go into the website, which won't be available till April 13th, and actually request benefits. And then they say it's going to take weeks after those folks apply, because they don't have wages in the unemployment system. They're going to have to go to the tax system to get those. So, but they will get it. My expectation is maybe not till the end of April, but at least they know that the benefits are there. So if you have employees that are on unemployment, and you see them, please let them know that they should be getting an email from the Department of Labor on Monday or Tuesday, and that email is going to require them to supply some additional information. And as soon as they do that, then they will get the additional $600. So it's a really pretty good program, I think. It's just taking a while to get it up and going. Okay, the next one is what the legislation calls recovery rebate. The IRS calls it economic impact payment. It's the $1,200. If people have their direct deposit information with the service, I'm told they started processing those yesterday, and they should be posted to people's accounts by next week. They'll get an email telling them what they've got and when they get it and all that, so people should be looking out for emails. There's a few little nuances. It's Social Security number based, and it's based on 2018 and 19 taxes, so you had to have filed your taxes. But this program is really ready to get ramped up. There's a table here that's a little bit hard to see. Basically, if you don't have your direct deposit information, it could take weeks and months later to get it in there. So hopefully within the next day or two, they're going to open up a portal where you can put your direct deposit information in there. But anyway, that program is really rolling. This next piece was part of the second act, and it's called Families First, and it's an expansion of the Family Medical Leave Act. If y'all remember, the Family Medical Leave Act provides for 12 weeks of unpaid leave for an employee that gets sick or has to take care of a family member, and then you have to protect their job. What this does is this adds 2 weeks of paid sick leave, and then up to 12 weeks of what we would traditionally call Family Medical Leave Act that's paid at 2/3. And so there's a poster that we're all supposed to post because this is really effective April 1. The sick leave expires 12/31, but this is where folks, if you have people that are working and they get sick, or they have family members that get sick, or they can't work because their kids are out of school, they still get paid. And your question is probably, oh my gosh, that's going to really, I got to pay people that aren't working for me. Well, it's the same thing as that tax credit. You get to get reimbursed immediately by reducing the amount of payroll taxes you remit to the IRS on every time you run payroll. So they're trying to get this money to the employees and then give you the tax credit so that it flows pretty quickly. So if you have this, my recommendation would be to get with who processes your payroll. They're going to have different tax, little earnings codes you've got to set up and post it a little different so that they know when they process how to hold it. But anyway, a pretty good program, especially if you've got employees that get sick or have family members. Then the final one we'll talk about real quickly. This relates to 401k plans. If as an employer you have a 401k plan, there is now a new distribution called a coronavirus related distribution. You have to amend your plan to accept these, but what it allows you to do is have your employees, if they need money, they can take it out of their 401k without having to pay the 10% penalty. And you can even waive the 10% withholding. So if somebody needs money desperately, you could let them take it out of their retirement plan without having to pay any taxes. And then the interesting piece that's coming back is they can spread the income over 3 years instead of having to take all that, or they could repay it back over 3 years. So a benefit for folks that are truly desperate and have some assets. So, all right, so Bethany is now going to talk about some tools to help you navigate through this.
Okay, guys, so to end this off, we just really want to underline the importance of these really practical business financial tools. These aren't programs or policies that came out of the CARES Act. These are just standard business tools that we think we need to all employ and employ well in the weeks ahead, just to be sure that we're very clear about the level of impact we're going to experience from the pandemic and what it's going to take for us, not only, as we were talking about earlier, to reopen, but to ramp back up and be sustainable for the long term, right? So there's 3 key kinds of tools that we're just gonna quickly talk about here. If I can, hang on one second. I'm in the wrong zone here. Escape. Sorry, I gotta actually get the right shared screen there. Okay, now I'm there, y'all. Okay. Okay, so the first is projections, financial projections. So these are a forecast, a monthly look forward, what your anticipated income and expenses are, so you can determine if you're gonna have any net losses, right? So a forecast forward. Then the second piece is cash flow analysis. So once you have an idea, okay, I'm going to be short and this is the amount that I'm going to be short, or actually maybe I'll break just even. The cash flow analysis is like, will I literally have the money on hand each week as income comes in, as expenses have to be paid? Will I have the money on hand to pay my anticipated expenses in the weeks ahead? And then lastly, budgeting. So here you take those projections, but you take some strategies and put them into play so that you can break even or have some net profit moving forward. So projections, what you're going to need to do is just determine your typical monthly operating income and expenses. And I underline operating for our nonprofit folks. Not so much programmatic pieces, but just what's it taking to pay my team, keep the lights on, and so on. So if you work with an accountant, you can get your income statements. Getting them a month at a time would be ideal from the last calendar year, but if you only have the year as a whole, you can still take that and divide it by 12 and get some idea of what your average income, and also just taking a look at what are my standard monthly expenses, right? And jotting those down if you don't have them somewhere in a spreadsheet or already in some kind of accounting software. If you don't have access to that information, if you don't work with an accountant, you can look at your most recent business tax return to get a nice idea of your typical expenses and your average annual income, and do some math there to give you a good average monthly income rate. And then definitely use bank statements, especially if you're a newer business. It might be ideal if you're more of a seasonal business to see how you did at this exact time last year versus the beginning of 2020. But at least take a look at a couple statements to get some ideas of your typical income and your spending, your business spending by category. And then before you run your post-COVID-19, post-disaster projections, please call all your vendor suppliers, lenders, and determine, is there anything that I can defer right now? And then we recommend making some kind of little chart to help you realize how long is this deferment available to me? How much will I be paying now versus what I was paying previously? And just keep that somewhere handy to refer to. One really important thing to keep in mind is that deferments is not forgiveness. It's just pushing forward when these monies are due. And so if you're not careful, and this is why the cash flow is going to be so important as the second piece, you could look up and suddenly have thousands of dollars in deferments due once you're back open. And that could be really hard to take in stride as you ramp back up. So get a good sense of what that means. As a, for instance, with a loan, when you come out from paying interest only, they going to extend? Is your lender going to extend the term so that you're loan payments stay the same, or is the term going to be shorter and your payments are actually going to be higher when you get back to making regular payments? So you just need to be sure you're clear on those definitions of deferment and what it means when you get back to paying your regular payments. And then you're simply going to plug these numbers in. So your anticipated income with any disruptions to your cash flow, along with these new your expense numbers based on the deferments that you've secured for yourself, and just see in the month ahead, starting with April, does it look like I'm going to have a net loss or a net gain, and at what level? And then you can take that and project it out at least for the quarter ahead. As James mentioned, we can anticipate at least through early summer being impacted by shelter in place and some time that it's going to take for us to ramp back up and get back fully open for business. So cash flow, you want to look, cash flow is all about timing, right? So you got to start with your exact cash balance, choose a specified start date. We recommend the Monday of your next full work week. So if you want to get going on this over the weekend, start with Monday, April 13th, Easter Monday, and check all your cash account balances. And then be sure that you don't have any check pending that's about to be cashed, or maybe a deposit that you've made that's going to come through, to just have that true starting cash number. And then you're just going to look at each week at a time and think about what bills are going to be due this week. Am I going to be collecting any kind of income? Is it, a draw for my endowment that's going to be available to me? And you're just going to put your income in and your expenses and see where you stand literally in cash for that week, and then carry that balance over and basically rinse, wash, and repeat. But cash flow, just to make sure you've got the money on hand to pay expenses as they arise in the weeks ahead. And then lastly is going to be the budget. 3 ways to anticipate any issues in your cash flow. First of all, are there new income streams available to you right now? Are there, creative things you can do, other ways to bring in money with disruptions to your business? Are there ways to cut costs? And then lastly, are there other sources of income, available lines of credit? Maybe you're one of the lucky few who actually had pandemic coverage insurance, right? And you're going to get a credit from your insurer. So anything like that is going to be income coming in that you can count on, or that you can draw on right now during your cash crunch. We do, it's not money, and it's not money in your hand until it's money in the bank. And especially with these SBA loans, as we are just saying over and over again, because they're so overwhelmed, we just don't know when those monies are going to show up. So until you get those monies, you can't count on them as part of your budget at this time. And so a budget, basically, you're going to just take those cash flow strategies that you identify for yourself, those other ways that you can improve your bottom line, and then you'll take those strategies and marry them with your projections and come up with some kind of short-term plan to stay profitable. So this example here was actually it took the April 2020 that I had earlier and made some adjustments and how we were bringing in income and deferring expenses, and went from net losses to net profit. So just to sum up, using projections to help you determine if you will experience losses and at what level. Cash flow, helping you determine your ability to pay bills as they come due. And then your budget is to help you develop a strategy to help you stay sustainable. It's something you should continue to refer to be sure you're staying on track, so you can work in the red instead of the black. And these are just such critical tools to business success anyway. So we're going to do some special webinars on these tools. We've worked with lots of business owners on these tools over the last few years. And so we've got some great worksheets and some digital tools that can help you work through these as well. They can be overwhelming if you haven't done them on your own. So this is a piece that we're really excited to work with you a little more closely on, to be sure you can have your own personalized versions of these financial reports to help you stay sustainable and even successful in the weeks ahead. So Josh, that was my last little bit on that piece for today.
Great. If you'll take the screen sharing off. Thank you. I've got one more little piece I want to share. So we're into next steps and we're going to end on question and answers, but what you need to do next is hopefully you've got a sense of which of these programs are most likely to benefit you and your business. So the next thing I want you to do is go to newtownmacon.com/COVID-19 and register for any of the specialized recovery coaching program classes. So we've mentioned each of those topic areas. They'll be clearly stated there, and now you'll know what they are. And so in almost every case, I think all of you, if you've not done your economic injury disaster loan or your Paycheck Protection Program loan, at minimum, you need to register for both those programs right now. In all likelihood, we think even if the current authorization from Congress runs out of money, they're going to provide more money. So, and all of them are being processed first come, first serve. So we need to get your application in line for those programs immediately. The other thing I'd say is I've talked to a couple business owners who are unsure about whether they're going to have negative impacts from COVID-19, and so they're a little hesitant about whether to go ahead and apply for those programs, or they're actually doing well. They're one of the few industries that's doing better under COVID-19 than before. I still have encouraged everyone to apply for these programs. As Bethany mentioned earlier, the qualifications don't exclude people in either of those categories. And so even if you're doing really well, I'd encourage you to apply for these programs and give the money to a nonprofit who could desperately need it right now. The Middle Georgia Food Bank wasn't able to serve everyone who needed access to food yesterday. So this is government money. It is free. You are qualified for it. Apply for it, get it, and use it to do something that'll help somebody who is experiencing impacts from COVID-19. You can reference the resource guide. It's again at newtownmacon.com/COVID-19. It's a button at the bottom of that web page. It is constantly updated. It is a living Google Doc that I know Emily, I saw, has been working on it while we were on this webinar. So you are going to get the latest information 24/7, everything we know you will know at that resource guide. Call, text, or email any of us if you'd like one-on-one help. So like James said, this is super specific. Every business is different, but we are all here all the time to provide whatever you need one-on-one to make sure that you can get your business or nonprofit taken care of. The other thing we'd love to hear, same link with those emails and cell phones, we'd love to know exactly what you're going through. So far, we haven't heard from anybody who's gotten a response on a PPP loan or been awarded an EIDL, or even been asked for additional information on either of those counts. So you can help us help your fellow business owners and nonprofit executives if you keep us in the loop with what you know when you know it. So again, please just share with us as you find out new information. Now I've got a few information. I've got a few questions in the chat, but only a couple. So while we move through these, if you've thought of additional questions for you or your business, please go ahead and post them in the chat, and I will jot those down and we'll keep moving through them. The first question I've got is from Felicia. Felicia, do you mind asking your question about business credit?
Yeah, so Bethany mentioned earlier in her presentation that the organizations may request either personal credit or business credit. And I wanted to see, how do you go about determining your business credit? I know it has something to do with your DNB, but as far as like trying to know exactly what that score is, where it should be, and what steps can you take to make sure that you have a good business credit score? I need help in trying to determine that.
Yeah, you're right. So far, our belief is that these decisions are being made on personal credit, not the business credit, especially for sole proprietors or LLCs with one member. So to find out your business credit, you go to dnb.com. That's Dun & Bradstreet. And you can search right here for your business credit file. The thing about business credit they do have an option for you to be able to review your own file for free. So that option's right there on dnb.com. In all likelihood, even for Newtown, which, I think we're a mid-sized nonprofit, we're not tiny, but there ain't much there. And so the business credit reports tend to be useless except for America's largest corporations and businesses. But that's how you get to it. Scott, you had a question next about hearing from SBA. Do you mind asking that for everybody?
Hey, Josh. I think that was way back a long time ago. I think I was asking, I was one of the first people, I actually applied for the EDIL before y'all did. And I have heard nothing. I have not got an email or anything. I got a confirmation number and that's it. So I was just wondering, has anybody else gotten anything at all?
That's great. We can open that up to the whole call. I'll start out and say I heard from one business owner in downtown Macon who did get a denial, and it was based on personal credit. And that's all they heard. So they didn't get any inquiries ahead of time. They just got a denial. And that is the only person I have heard of at all who's gotten a response on the economic injury disaster line. Does anybody else want to chime in with whether, if they've heard anything?
I can add that we were on the call with SBDC Macon office, and at that point, midweek, they didn't know of anyone in Middle Georgia who had heard from the SBA or received an award yet.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, well, let me start. Fanika mentioned something that's not a question, but just a note. And that is that SBA typically lends about $20 billion per year, and now they're asked to try and get $349 billion out the door, and to do it in 2 weeks, not a whole year. And they've got the same staff that they had to do that $20 billion, and honestly, even less than that because some of their staff is impacted by the virus. So, yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. From the whole system involved in this process, we are asking them to do things that have never been done in the history of the world. It is a big ask, and we're trying to be as patient as possible. So Jennifer Bronner, you've got a question. Do you mind asking the group?
Sure. I've heard different answers on this, but are 501c6 organizations eligible for EIDL and the PPP loans that y'all know of? Some I've heard say yes, some I've heard say no, and I've heard different things from the U.S. Chamber also, but I was just wondering if y'all heard anything different.
I believe yes, that C6s and C4s are eligible. I would at least recommend applying and make them deny it. But from everything I've read, C6s and C4s, as long as they're under those total employee limits and conform with all the rest of the regulations around the eligible applicants, are eligible to apply for both programs. So we've caught up on questions. Does anybody have any last questions that they'd like to ask the group? Anything that's just occurred to you? Well, I hope this has been useful. This has been the latest information that we have to share. It's an overview. Yes, yes.
Did I hear someone say that you can apply for the PPP and the EIDL?
That's right, Alex.
Huh?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Well, at some point, I'll just call you, Bethany, if it's okay to discuss it.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Bring it on, Alex.
You absolutely can apply for both. And our advice right now is that you should. That every eligible business ought to fill out both applications. One of the things about applying is it doesn't mean you have to take it. you will still have another option on what you actually choose to close and draw down. But if you don't apply, you definitely won't have that option. So, and Bethany mentioned earlier
I see Scott smiling. What you smiling at, Scott?
It's nice to see smiles. It's really nice to see smiles. Even when there is joy, the masks are covering it up. So it's nice to.
It is.
But
It
yeah,
is.
so I mean, with the SBA loan, with the EIDL, you can put it into suspense for a year, right, Bethany?
6 months.
6 months.
But yeah, you know, which timing wise, if you think about it, is great because that'll take most businesses up to the gear up holiday season. So maybe everything seems fine, but you didn't like quite anticipate a cash flow issue that pops up come October and you need to, you know, pile on certain kinds of inventory, or come November, you got to make huge food orders for catering demand. So the fact that you can wait and see, I think is, you know, a real benefit of the program.
Right, because for most of our clients, they'd be putting that stuff on a line of credit or on a credit card. And your slide earlier that compared the costs of those different sources of funds, there's nothing cheaper than what the SBA is offering right now. So even if it's just a normal cash crunch where you need working capital at some point later in the operation of your business in the next 6 months, what a great arrow to have in the quiver ready to launch, to have access to this funds at a really low cost.
All right. Thank you.
Could you clarify something for me, please, regarding the non-disaster debt relief program? And its deferral of principal and interest for 6 months. That is at the end of the 6 months, we just would that amount be rolled back into the loan of, you know, or and then repayment expected, or how does that work?
No, they're going to pay it for you. I mean, it's 6 months that the federal government is making your loan payment for you. Now,
And to apply for that, we would go to our lender.
You have to currently hold or close on a non-disaster SBA loan. So it's either an SBA 7A loan, which is specifically for small business inventory working capital, an SBA 504 loan, or an SBA micro loan, which, I mean, some of you might want to look into it since you get 6 free months, because their process on that, it's a small business loan of $50,000 or less. I don't know the terms, but if you were to close on that prior to June 30, you would get 6 months that the federal government pays for you. Yeah, so it's that's a gift. I mean, it's 6 months basically of forgiven payments.
And the loan would have been closed before, what date did you say?
June 30th, 2020.
Okay.
Now, Bethany, that's something that hadn't occurred to me till right now, but there's also no prepayment penalty on any of those loan products, especially the what do you call it? The micro loan.
Right.
So you could actually use the 6 months where they're paying the P&I and pay off the loan at the end of the 6 month, and it would cost you nothing. And you'd have gotten 6 months of a $50,000 loan for free, which is thousands of dollars. A lot of work, but hey, every little bit helps right now.
We could check out that application process a little more, Josh.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to you guys if we get a little more on that and get a better sense of what's involved to actually get one of those awarded.
All right, everybody, this is the last shot for any questions or comments or anything helpful for the group. Great, thank you very much. Thank you to my Newtown team. I'm incredibly grateful for how smart and capable y'all are and how hard you've been working to make sure that people get good information. And all of you small business owners and nonprofits who are on the call, I'm incredibly grateful for everything you're doing. We're all depending on you. We need an economy after this, and that's now on your shoulders. Whether that's, Ms. Webb, we talked earlier about you employing a pastor. Pastors need jobs. To Scott and the event spaces at Lofty. I mean, gosh, it's impossible to imagine our community without every one of you succeeding. And so we're in it with you, and we're going to do the very best we can. And I just appreciate how upbeat and helpful and cooperative you've all been with each other. And I look forward to getting through this. It was great to see y'all. It was great to share some smiles. We'll post this in about an hour on our YouTube channel for you to review and share. And again, check that resource guide if you need anything. It was good to see y'all. Y'all have a great Easter weekend.
Thank you. You too.